Restaurant operators are sitting on more data than they've ever had. They've also probably are more confused about what to do with it than ever. So AI, is it's everywhere in the conversation, but almost nowhere in the actual operation. And this episode is about trying to close the gap between the promise and the reality of AI inside of restaurants.
Great to be on the show, Paul.
Well, yeah, it's we've been working with each other for a while now, and without question, we've seen this space seemingly develop every week. Every week there's a new release. Every week there's a new development. But before we get into the incredible fast pace of everything, I really want to start with you by getting into a little bit of a story, right? I mean, you've worked closely now with multi-unit restaurant operators for a while. Tell me about a moment that you've had, like a real conversation with an operator where you realized the data problem was much bigger than anyone was actually talking about publicly.
Yeah, I can absolutely do that. We do these data strategy conversations with really every customer, and they talk about their problems. Um, and in our services business, we've been doing these strategy workshops as the first part of really every engagement in a traditional custom data platform approach. That will start with a strategy workshop, and then you go to build it, and you operate it, you iterate on that after that. And so we had the strategy workshop. We sit down for a couple hours, and a customer will talk to us about their pain points, and we're taking notes, recording what's going on, what's really important for them, their goals, their opportunities, what's really hurting. At the same time, I'm adding up in the back of my mind,
Yep.
what's going on with them, what's going to be the complexity of the solution, how much work is it going to take, and it's a fairly typical exercise, right? But as they start going through it, it just starts building. They start off, and I remember this particular restaurant customer had two different POS systems. They're migrating between those. They had two systems, and of course, they didn't talk together. And that was an initial pain point in itself to get point of sales that have different data structures to talk to each other. But they had some other ones like their soft drink flavors. They didn't show up. The soft drinks didn't show up in the point of sale. So you had to tie point of sale to inventory and purchasing to really know which flavors were really selling.
Okay.
And that had a huge delay to it. They had monthly franchisee P&L reports. These came in a different spreadsheet formats. Those have to be brought into a proprietary database. So that's a couple more systems that have to be involved there, as well as some manual labor. What else? Customer experience. That's a challenge for everybody, right? Because customer experience, you have their loyalty program application that a chunk of customer data, and then they had point of sale that might have a limited amount of names in there. They have a CRM surveys, all these feedback systems. So all in all, by the time we get through it, there's 10 or 12 at least systems
Right.
that they had. And compared to last time we've had this conversation with customers, a couple more that have come into the market, new technologies, new systems involved, and start adding up the work for them. And it's going to be, months to get to, some initial insights that they need out of it, maybe initial high priority KPIs, probably a year or more to get to all these goals they laid out. And by the time it's all done,
Yeah.
it's going to be all changed, right?
Right.
So it's a huge problem, and it's an expensive problem. But at the same time, data intelligence is fundamental to the restaurants. If you're going to operate a modern restaurant, you have to have those KPIs.
That's
They
right.
come across from more and more systems, but you need that to focus your efforts on what's going to be next for whatever that restaurant is. And so I guess that got to me to a couple key realization. One, those KPIs are more complex because there's more systems to pull across. There's 4 or 5 customer data systems, not just one. That it's impossible to do that with like a legacy BI system and traditional approaches where you might connect everything in there because it's too complex in that environment. And I think the biggest thing was that it's unattainable for
Yeah.
many restaurants because of the cost
Right.
and the time to do it. That unless you're one of the largest restaurants, how can you possibly afford to do it on a restaurant budget? Right? It's a big challenge.
It's a massive challenge. It is. I mean, there's like a phrase that you kind of hear a lot from operators. We have all this data, but we can't do anything with it. And when they say that, it sounds to me like what you're describing. You know, maybe you can get a little bit more into technically. Why is it so hard to fix? Is it because of these systems and data is disparate? Is it because they don't have access to it? I mean, what makes it so uh, difficult for restaurants to actually work with the data that they have?
I would call it two big problems that really comes down to the gap between raw isolated data and your business insights and decisions you need to make.
Okay,
The first, I think many people are aware of, is a data silo problem. That's these data lives in these different systems.
right.
It's isolated, it's proprietary format. There are no standards for how you get to it or how it's structured in there, right? And so pulling this stuff together is the first problem. And then it's what we call master data management, but it's really a cleaning problem
Hmm.
on that data that with these different formats, different conventions, and things like spelling errors may be called one thing in one system. It could be called your two pack of chicken.
Yeah.
It would be spelled with a number two or a letter two. Maybe there's a hyphen, maybe there's not a hyphen. This that I think everyone's seen in all different kinds of data that there's without the cleaning, it just doesn't come together, right?
Yeah, a chicken breast, could be named 13 different things. The same sandwich or the same menu item might be coded differently from franchisee to franchisee. So I can definitely see how that is a problem. But I'm wondering, so when you have data that's like that, you can't just put AI on top of like of bad or incomplete data, right? That's a recipe for that's not going to help anybody.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But there's a great AI application for it. So
Okay.
inference can do things that used to be done with, fuzzy matching these other data terms to go and try to bring these together.
Hmm.
But AI has made that a lot simpler and smarter to try to place it. We use it in our own platform, and I know many others do, to go and match all those different terms can kind of suggest here's where this data goes
Okay.
instead of the manual effort of going through each one of them line by line and fixing them, right?
Right.
So it's got power, but you can't give it complete control because it's not going to be right 100% of the time. You're right; it would be a disaster.
Right. So there's this notion of restaurant AI being different from general purpose AI. Can can you describe for the audience a little bit about why the solutions that are built for restaurants might be different than the solutions that they're using at their desktop for other reasons?
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we start with like an example? So if you're using general purpose AI and you're asking it, say, what stores are underperforming on labor, right?
Hmm.
General purpose AI doesn't know anything about your restaurant. It could say, you said stores, let's go look at Walmart. Walmart's a store, and I'm going to look at what Walmart's doing, or maybe an industry average of labor, because it doesn't know your restaurant concept and what you're all about, right? And so it first needs to know like you're a QSR versus fine dining, and here's your concept and your goals as a business, and it needs to know how you run, right? A little deeper than that, like what's your schedule and what are your actual promotions? What's your menu?
Right.
Without that, of course, it's not going to have any relevance to your particular business. It's going to be industry business or something else it knows from public knowledge, and That's context.
So it seems almost, I want to get into into, what's actually happening technically, why it's so difficult or why they can't do anything with their data. But before we glide into that, I just like to make a comment, and maybe you can back this up. But it almost feels like being a smaller organization, being a smaller operation, with fewer systems, you have a significant advantage. Do independents have any advantage over enterprise operators with 12, 15, 18 different systems?
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's part of it's just math. The more integrations,
Yeah.
the more complex it is. So if you're running three systems, it's much easier. It's actually exponentially more difficult as you add more systems because of the different
Okay.
level of integrations that can are possible there. So I would absolutely agree. And there's also a difference in the complexity of some systems. Some enterprise platforms are highly customized just to that enterprise,
Yeah.
and that requires more specialized integration versus more kind of called out of the box integration that might be possible with a smaller environment.
Just so when restaurants say they have all this data but they can't do anything with it, um, maybe you can explain for me, what that means, what's happening technically, when they say that. Is it that, why haven't, for example, why haven't POS systems, solved this already?
There's a couple of reasons. But just looking at the POS vendors, it's a bit outside of their scope, right, to
Okay.
solve the whole problem for the world. They're not handling all your reviews. They don't even have access to that data. It's outside of theirs. Um, there is a challenge in that they're not structured right. So under the hood, there's two real types of systems we're talking about. There's transactional systems,
Yep.
and that requires a particular structure of how you're building your data. And there's analytics platforms, and analytics platforms structure data to bring data together from multiple systems and for it's a totally different use. Here you're doing reporting and intelligence. And so they're fundamentally different under the hood,
Hmm.
and their focus eliminates some portions of the equation from what they do. So that's always going to limit those vendors from being able to solve the whole problem.
Okay. What is it about AI infrastructure, that needs to happen when you put sort of AI on top of your data?
Yeah, let me address it in a couple of ways. One is you need to bring the data together, called the data silo problem. Before you can have AI, it has to be brought together, and AI has to have access to it. And so that's in itself called a data silo because each vendor has their data and it's structured in a proprietary format. There's no standards around that,
Mm.
and you have to first go out, get that data, bring it together, right? There's also a data cleanliness problem. We call it the master data management problem, and understanding, here is the source record that everybody knows is complete, and you could all your systems can reference, right? And that's being able to take this data and clean it and assemble it together so that it's well understood by all the everywhere you need to use it, right? And so,
Okay.
as an example of that, you could have, say, a product that's like a two pack of chicken or
Hmm.
something, and that could be spelled, with the number two, the letter two. It could be two dash pack, or it could not have the hyphen in there. It could be misspelled, and so those need to be corrected. Right, that's the cleaning part of it before anyone can use it. Otherwise, that might show up as four different products when it's really the same product, right? And that really messes with your
Absolutely.
analytics.
Sure. Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So it's part of that cleaning process. So we have the cleaning and then the unification. So the cleaning and unification is kind of like, it's almost like the 1-2 punch of what's necessary for creating good data to work with, a solid foundation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So these So it's safe to say then, a data intelligence platform like OpSage or others is going to be handling that, taking all of this data, cleaning it, and then unifying it for practical AI use.
Yeah, it's really necessary. It's like you said, it's the foundation. Unless you built the foundation, it's not possible to put the AI on top of it, right?
Okay. So, another thing that I keep hearing about lately, attending lots of different conferences and listening in on various restaurant AI podcasts and industry events is the notion of, data security. So, I'd like to talk a little bit about data security because I think when operators, hear things like, your sales data, or your labor data, or your margins are all flowing through an AI platform, you can understand that some operators might get a little bit nervous about that. So, what should they actually be asking AI data platform vendors about security? And what answers would you say should concern them?
Yeah, this is huge. I know in our conversation, other conferences, this has been like a top concern, and it's kind of a barrier, right?
Hmm.
As a company, you can do what you want in your personal life and the AI use, but when you come to enterprise data, now it's a whole different level of concern. So I would say first, it's deciding which AI to trust. There are consumer AI where it's clear in their terms that they use your data for training their AI. That's how AI gets smarter. They need to train it. And if you're not paying for it, in many cases, what you're paying for is with your data, and they're using that to train. And in a way, a portion of your information may get shared ultimately with somebody else who's asking a question, right?
Okay.
And so there are enterprise AI solutions, and OpSage, for instance, we use AI's models. Sorry, AWS's AI models, and so these stay within the AWS cloud. Are your prompts, what you share with them, never get sent to your AI model provider where they could be used for training. These are privately held, and so AWS doesn't save the prompts. They're not used for training, and that's where your privacy is assured. Again, your consumer models may not do that same thing, but that's just fundamental to keeping enterprise data secure. Now,
Right.
there's a whole different area. If you look at AI within apps and AI powered apps, that and many people they're layering AI powered on top of traditional applications.
Yeah.
One huge concern there is in the legacy AI security, the legacy SaaS application
Hmm.
architecture, many cases is not built for AI security. And the difference is a traditional model, when you log into that application, there's a role assigned to you and it says you have access to this data, right?
Okay.
And
It's
your
role
application handles.
based,
Yeah,
role based access. Okay.
role-based access, exactly.
Right.
And then under the hood, your application has full access to the database underneath it because users don't have direct access. They're all structured queries under there that it's asking the data. It controls all those 100%. So here's where that breaks. When you throw AI into the picture,
Yep.
AI is now generating those queries. If you let your application users ask anything to your data,
Right.
now AI is generating those queries. You no longer control exactly what the AI output is, right? You can't guarantee that. And so your security layer on top just got bypassed, and you're getting your AI access to the data. So what vendors have to do is really flip the security model. You need to now put AI down at the very lowest layer in the database at the objects that AI is accessing and restrict access there so that no matter what AI asks, if it doesn't have permission to do it, it doesn't have access to that data. It's a very different model and a layer of security. We actually have 5 different layers building up from there, through the AI, the database objects to the database access tier through AI query parsing to, the role-based access controls to the authentication layer, all the way up in order to build from the bottom up security.
So it's really that fundamental difference between data security at the application level, at the application layer versus the data layer. And you're saying that, well, it has to be both, but the
They
data
will.
layer, the data, it has to be literally built in from almost from day one.
Yeah.
It's at the data layer.
Yeah.
So I love
I,
that. So
I would
there's
I would call that. Sorry to interrupt, but I would call that a zero trust AI model.
a zero
Your
trust
listeners,
AI. All right.
yeah, people may be familiar with zero trust in the network world, not allowing people to go anywhere in your network.
Right.
And to me, it's exactly the same thing in AI. You can't trust 100% what AI is going to generate, so you just treat it as untrusted and secure around it.
Okay. And so it's again, you working inside of AWS, which means that all of the data that's shared kind of stays within that box. It's never going anywhere else.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. I had a question lined up, another, and you naturally hinted towards this throughout your answers, but integrations, right? Integrations kind of like a lot of where AI and analytics projects can sometimes go sideways. So if an operator signs a contract and then 6 months later they're still waiting for their POS, to connect properly, I mean,
Yeah.
what should operators expect from a serious AI platform vendor with regard to integrations?
Yeah. And it comes back to kind of where we started with all these different integrations you have to build. It just takes time. So if you're starting from scratch with your partner, you have to expect that they need time to go and build each of these integrations for you and add them into their custom platform.
Okay.
Um, and there's a lot of third party coordination delay there since it's not the restaurant themselves. If I'm integrating your data, it's not me. My team can be as fast as possible. Your team can be ultra responsive, but it might be a third party that you need to work with that has to provide that data. That's one of your vendors, and so that coordination just takes time. And of course, the building each of those custom integrations takes some development time. Getting to that common data model, I mentioned like the master data management, bringing all these things together,
Right.
cleaning it, that does take time to go through it and test it. And now with AI, there's a whole AI intelligence layer. If you're adding that on top of it, that's just adds that much more to it. So it's not it's inevitable if you're building a custom platform
Mhm.
that it's going to take time and it's expected.
So when
It
you're
is.
building out an AI platform for a restaurant operator, you have to start somewhere. Are you generally starting with the point of sale and then you're moving what to labor? Are you basically prioritizing that with the operator client, or is there sort of a methodology that you follow as you when you're presented with clients that have multiple, many different systems? Is it just a conversation about what to prioritize?
For a custom platform, yes. When we're talking about OpSage, one of the reasons why we built the platform was that we can have these pre-built. And so
Okay.
once pre-built into the platform, it takes a lot of that delay away. There are just depending on, certain vendors have great APIs, and you can have them pre-built, plug in your credentials, and you're off and running.
Yeah.
There are others that are a lot more manual effort, or they're file transfers, it's proprietary, it's spreadsheets, whatever it is. Those are the ones that can't be immediate, right? But by having all the underlying data in place, all the cleaning's already in place, all the tools are there, you can have 90% of it done and then go and add those onto it later. So there's a platform advantage, but there are places where you still need to expect some of that additional work. Well, I would say certain platforms that have custom schemas.
Okay.
This is more common maybe in like the customer experience platforms where there's like survey questions and things like this
Hmm.
that we've run into. They had a different schema for every customer. It needs to be extended, or they're more complex, and you may have to have custom rules. Basically, the more customized your platform is that we're integrating with,
Yeah.
the more work it's probably going to be to integrate it into the data platform, whether it's a pre-built platform like OpSage or a custom data platform.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. You know, um, you touched on this earlier, and this is always a question I think that comes up in restaurant tech circles, and I think we're seeing a lot of operators try this on their own, as a matter of fact. But you do hear from operators more and more. Well, we're already using ChatGPT or Claude for some of this stuff, so why do I need anything else? I mean, how would you respond to that?
Yes, well, it comes back to the context, as well as semantics. I don't think we've really gone that deep on that in this conversation. So I can maybe take a minute on it.
Yeah.
So, your general AI, they're becoming like a genius. Like Mark Cuban said months ago that AI is like a drunken intern. Well, now it's more like a drunken genius, because they're really smart, but they just don't know your restaurant. So you don't need just a genius; you need somebody who's a genius on your restaurant. And so that gets into knowing who you are. You're a quick serve restaurant, fast casual, whatever it is, what your concept is, and also knowing how you operate. What's your menu?
Right.
What are your shifts? All these questions that are really only available in your data. And so that is the context of
Right.
what you are and as a restaurant. Then there's also the semantics of it, and that's actually the much harder problem. You can describe context to an AI
Yeah.
and tell it about who you are, but the semantics of what you're actually asking it. So for AI to understand your question and translate that into machine language is a much more difficult problem. And there's a whole semantic layer that has to be built on top of a data platform in order to answer that.
Okay, so what you're saying is for AI to actually know your restaurants versus being able to just generally, talk about restaurants, for it to really know your restaurants, that's where these integrations and the context and the the cleaning and unification that we talked about earlier, that's where it really comes into play. So this drunken genius
That's right.
is maybe sobered up a little bit and a lot more reliable.
Yes.
Right. I mean, so because listen, you can't, it's, I think, the reliability aspect of it, because yeah, it feels very tempting, I'd imagine, for operators, particularly the IT teams, to try to work out these things on their own as a project. But I think that generally one area where they might fail is with regard to that cleaning and unification. I, I, it sounds to me like that is, well, as you mentioned earlier, truly foundational. Let's talk about this idea of an operator. They have the data infrastructure right, and the AI is working. The integrations are now clean. So now that it's all there, what does a Monday morning look like for, say, a VP of Ops who's actually, you know, getting what you're describing? What does a Monday morning look like to now a user of an AI intelligence platform?
Yeah. And well, for my conversations, what I really think operators want is to have this information put in front of them. And
Hmm.
that's a real powerful of AI is to go and collect all this data. You brought it all together, like you said, but go and look at it for me, right? And put together what's relevant for my position in a restaurant and on Monday morning and bring it to me
Right.
with all this analysis done. So as an, like we call it an OpSage is your personal analyst, right? Because it does all this stuff for you once it's all clean, prepped, and brought together. And it's a fantastic use of AI. That's the same kind of stuff now that once that's done, that you can do with your consumer AI asking, questions about, something on the internet, right? Your product
Right.
research on the internet that you want to buy when you're researching a car or something now. Now you can do that with your own data, but it can be done automatically. You don't have to even go and ask it. It can be put right in front of you on Monday morning. It can bring all the different elements together with alerts, what was happening with the weather that impacted your sales.
Yeah.
It could have, specific to your region, It could have your key KPIs and business goals in there incorporated into it. And if you're a QSR, it can recognize here's what your, you know, labor rate should be versus your prime costs are different if you're in a different segment, right?
Right.
All these things can be brought together, and that's the huge power of AI is to
I mean, that's really like the promise of this whole thing, right? Is like to bring it all together and almost in some ways create the Holy Grail reports. I mean, I remember for years we would always be chasing, what's the Holy Grail report that Monday morning or even daily um, um, overview of what's happening, forecasts, what is predict, all of these things together in one place in a reliable and trustworthy presentation. And that's the whole promise of AI, isn't it? I mean, really to kind of bring it all together and to rise up and to bring forth um, not only predictive analytics, but also in a lot of ways prescriptive. To be prescriptive about uh, this is what needs your attention now, and this is what you should do about it.
yeah, absolutely. And that I would agree. It's AI is there.
Yeah,
There's no real barrier to it except being able to give it the right, context, semantic layer, so it understands your business. And
right.
our customers are seeing it. Customers are getting those benefits today.
You know, uh, just going off menu for a second here. I've seen in a lot of uh, even in OpSage's pages and descriptions, you talk about ask your restaurants anything. Maybe you can just chat for a moment about chatting with your restaurant. Is that truly going to be something that's possible where you can literally ask your restaurants a question and get a a viable, trusted, reliable answer in return?
Yes, it is, and I think it'll keep getting better over time. Many of us who are working in AI every day have seen how it's evolved over the last year, and it's incredible. It's like night and day difference. So yes, it can. I think with the state of the industry today, that um, it's you do have to use some judgment and your own context around it because it's limited by
Mm-hmm.
what AI knows about you and the quality of the models that you're using, right? And so if you're using the right model, it might give you, the exact perfect answer. But if it's missing a bit of information, it might give you something that it believes is correct and tells you is correct, but you have to be able to apply a little business, logic on it to give it a sanity check of, certain decisions. So I would not use AI today
Right.
to go out and make a critical business decision without double checking it and running it through additional analysis for that. But there are a lot of things that it can make absolutely answer those questions that are complex, are calling from multiple domains, bringing those together and give you reliable answers today that are really complex.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. Okay, last one for you, Eric. Um, and I generally ask this of anybody I bring on the show. But if you're talking to a restaurant operator who's thinking about getting serious about AI data intelligence in the next several months, anyway, what's the one thing you want he or she to walk away from this conversation, having a better understanding of?
Well, one, I would say absolutely get started because no matter where you are or your size, there are ways you can leverage AI, even in a small way,
Yeah.
that are just time saving compared to things that were huge manual effort. It could be just internet research about your restaurant and go and ask a question. It doesn't even have to be proprietary data. And then build on that. You can build on that by adding in things and just making it more powerful over time. So one, get started, but two, like we started off with, is and a security portion here was do it safely.
Yeah.
Think about who you're sharing it with. Understand whether this is a public model and the type of data you're sharing with it, if you are sharing any data, and and make sure that you're comfortable with the security model.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds to me like when they're selecting a partner, they should really select a partner that is truly a data expert. It's been around the block a little bit, and truly understands, particularly the data security side of things. Um, Eric, this has been really, really great. I know we're going to do a part two on this, where we're probably going to dig in, maybe even a little bit deeper, or certainly as the world of AI develops further. I'd love to have you back and answer some more questions, and perhaps even field a couple of questions from my audience to ask you. But before then, what are you up to? Where can people find you? How can people get in touch with you to maybe check out OpSage, get a demo, where you're going to be? How do people find you, Eric?
Our website, opsage.com. That's very straightforward. Our next event is coming up in Chicago. That's QSR Summit there. That's in early June, I think June
Yes,
15th, 16th,
yes,
17th.
right.
And there'll be other events after that. And I'm looking forward to the next one, Paul.
Terrific, man. Well, I'll tell you what, for everybody listening or watching, the links will be in the description of the show. You'll find OpSage there. I'll also, Eric, put a link to your LinkedIn to let people connect you with you that way. Hey, this is awesome. I love. Uh, I mean, I think I can speak for almost everybody in the industry when I say that it's so exciting to see how this is all coming together, and I truly believe that AI in restaurants has the potential to bring everything that the industry has been talking about for so long to reality. Again, with those holy grail reports, as I like to call them. I I see a future where these reports are not only super accurate and reliable, but absolutely depended upon by throughout the organization for various reasons. Anyway, Eric Lehto, CONVX, OpSage. I'll put the links down below. Thank you again, friend. I appreciate you doing this.
It's great to be on, Paul. See ya.
Thank you.